it does appear that you have a challenge with the connection. So we'll ask you to join. We'll go to Nikki Phoenix in the meantime, and then we'll come back to you, Zoe, if that's fine with you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your forbearance on it. Let's, in the meantime, go to Nikki. Nikki Phoenix is with Free Press 268. Good morning to you, Nikki. Your questions, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I trust my audio is okay.
Let's proceed.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Harris, I'd like us to just continue this discussion regarding the Steve Morgan Foundation and this $1 million donation. Last Thursday at the post-cabinet press briefing, you responded to my colleague, Mr. Robert Emanuel, and you said that if there should be any follow-up, that we should be following up with the FSRC. These comments you made a few minutes ago, saying about, you basically said about an independent decision of the government. Now this morning, a few hours ago, I'm ahead of Antigua. So a few hours ago, I had a one-on-one interview with Mr. Steve Morgan himself from the Steve Morgan Foundation. And I wanted to just quote a couple of things that he said, and I wanted to get your response, because Mr. Morgan is basically saying that the government is responsible because the accounts was set up by the government. They were told to pay the accounts, pay into the account by the government. But I do not want to use my words. I want to share Mr. Morgan's words. He said, the government set the accounts up and we paid the money into it. So the government does have the responsibility. And by fobbing it off to say, well, it's now a regulator's job to look into it, that's not the conversation I had with Gaston Browne. 2 weeks before the election, the last election, on that particular occasion, he acknowledged that there was difficulties with the bank. And he said that we being the government of Antigua and Barbuda, can put some guarantees in place so that we, as in Steve Morgan Foundation, can access the funds. How does the government respond to that, Mr. Harris?
Well, I'm not so sure that what you have just said differs from what we've been conveying. In other words, we acknowledge that the funds were generated by the actions of the government of Antigua and Barbuda. We actually made the pitch to Mr. Morgan in order to get him to contribute, him and other benefactors, and they contributed significantly. That's why the Barbudans were able to get free homes. And we also ensured that all reporting had been done during the time that the reconstruction was taking place. Now, Mr. Morgan knows that he has two representatives who speak on his behalf insofar as the funds are concerned, and 3 from the government side. And as I indicated to one of your colleagues a minute ago, as soon as we can have an agreement between those 5 persons, or among those 5 persons, he can be assured that the money will be, we'll do with the money exactly as the group agrees wants to be done. So,
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
He has to have an agreement among the 5 persons who are managing the funds.
No problem. Thank you for that. He's basically saying that in his last conversation with the Prime Minister, because he said that the Prime Minister stated exactly, and I'm going to just quote what he said. He said that the Prime Minister in an email confirmed from Mr. Brian Stewart Young to Gaston Browne, Prime Minister Gaston Browne, which I must respectfully say, confirming that the account had been set up and that the relief fund is actually in the name of the government of Antigua and Barbuda Relief Fund. But he said also in his conversation with the Prime Minister said that the government can put certain guarantees in place so that these funds can be accessed by Steve Morgan's foundation. That's not the conversation you're having, or that's not the statement you're making to the public. You're basically saying that the UPP and operatives and everyone else is trying to distort this conversation, when Mr. Morgan himself is saying it's been 6+ years. I've been having meetings in person and also meetings, communications via email regarding $1 million. And that is a lot of money as a donation to devastated Barbuda at the time when it was donated, sir.
So what is the question?
So my question is, Why are you or the government distorting the message or the truth behind exactly what is happening with the funds for Mr. Morgan, the Global Bank, and Mr. Brian Stuart Young's involvement? That's my question.
I don't know that that is a question, but let me just attempt to respond to what you've said. We have explained already that we went out of our way to solicit funds for the rehabilitation of Barbuda because it had been 95% of the buildings there had been destroyed or seriously damaged by Hurricane Irma. Morgan's philanthropic fund contributed $1 million. But they wanted to ensure that there would be some control over the funds, and therefore they appointed two people to ensure that the direction of the funding would be as Morgan's philanthropic institution wanted to have those funds spent. And we had three people. This was an agreement among the donor as well as the recipient. And we had three people, three government officials, the auditor, the Auditor General, the Financial Secretary, and the Accountant General sign on as persons on the government side that would ensure that there is agreement among the five about how the funds are to be spent. That has not changed. That was the agreement from the very beginning. The funds were paid into the Global Bank of Commerce, and the Global Bank of Commerce encountered some difficulty and could not release the funds at the time. The discussion with Prime Minister Gaston Browne is about alternatives to submitting funds to the fund that was created, the Barbuda Rehabilitation Fund that had been created in an effort to ensure that we could attend to the Barbuda rehabilitation despite the fact that the funds were stuck within the Global Bank of Commerce. And that has been the extent of the story. There is nothing to conceal. There is no reason to mislead. And that is exactly what we have said again and again, that soon as the Global Bank of Commerce gets the necessary capital, I believe it is, that it can do with the $1 million as directed by the five, fine. But up until now, the five have not agreed on the manner in which the funds are to be spent. And therefore, the funds remain within the Global Bank of Commerce. The Antigua and Barbuda government has contributed the equivalent of $1 million to the fund that was established for the rehabilitation of Barbuda, guaranteeing, therefore, that the Barbudans would benefit from the contribution, but not necessarily from the same basket that the $1 million came from. And they have made it, our political opponents have made it an issue to appear as though some wrongdoing had been undertaken by the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and that is not the case. And so we have done our very best to try to explain it. And your contributions and your remarks as a result of your getting together with Mr. Morgan won't change the facts in the case, and the facts are as I have related them to you and to everybody else.
For that, thank you for that. I just want to add to that. Mr. Morgan says that he's not in a dispute between himself and the government. There's not a dispute, because in my interview, I termed that question. He said there's no dispute. He's just upset that the funds has not reached Barbuda, and he's asking the government to act right. And out of respect for someone who's donated over 300 million pounds, I'll be sharing that interview with the government first before making it public. Mr. Hurst, I just wanted to jump to a question from last week, my very first question from last week. I asked you a question. We were having very terrible audio on the inside, sorry, on the back end, I should say, for the journalists. And I asked you a question regarding China's reputation, and you were asking me to clarify, but I didn't hear that. So it basically came off like I didn't understood what I was asking or what I was talking about. So I just want to ask that question again, because we are concerned to know, or we want that interest of transparency and public awareness, that the government understands both the positive and the negative challenges or reputation or perspectives, as you would say, with regards to China. So let me clarify it, and then I can ask you to just shed light on the 10 MOUs and the interest of transparency again, and the government's understanding of China's reputation. The positive aspects, of course, is economic support, technological collaboration, trade opportunities, and infrastructure development. And the negative aspects of China's reputation and concerns, debt concerns, because many countries have raised concerns about the debt or the debt burdens associated with loans from China, human rights issues, environmental impacts with regards to Chinese investments, which would involve large-scale infrastructure projects, and of course, labor practices, which would differ, etc. So my question again, if I can repeat it quickly, Mr. Hurst, 10 MOUs signed, and there's a notable absence of those MOUs being sent to the public or the media. In the interest of transparency and public awareness, could you please shed some light on the government's concerns regarding China's reputation that may have influence on these agreements?
Well, first and foremost, you have made a nice long speech about China, and you have joined a list of reporters and others who seem to think that if they say bad things about China, that somehow the government of Antigua and Barbuda would change its policy towards China. That's not the basis on which we operate, and we are very intelligent, and we utilize our intelligence to make decisions that benefit the Antigua and Barbuda people. That's what the Antigua and Barbuda people hired us to do, not to pay attention to those who want to speak ill of China. China has been exceedingly generous. When the Bretton Woods system, the World Bank and the IMF, can set aside $500 million annually, China has set aside $1,000 million annually to help developing countries to develop their infrastructure and other kinds of systems that would allow developing countries to overcome some of the challenges that they face. And that is certainly the case in Antigua and Barbuda, where we had a deep water harbor that had been around for 50 years, constructed and delivered over in 1968, and was in terrible need of modernization and upgrade. And $97 million in borrowings from the China Export-Import Bank made the Antigua and Barbuda deep water port the cargo port, a modern port, container port that can now achieve income far higher than it did any time in its life. So we look at also at the air terminal in St. John's that now bear the name of Air Cornwall Bird, and that air terminal is a modern air terminal constructed again with resources borrowed from the People's Republic of China. We pointed to two polyclinics that serve the people in Seaton's as well as in Villa. Well, at least they're located in Seaton's and Villa, and they serve people from the surrounding communities. And we know that they are very useful to people who are ill and help to relieve suffering and, of course, to bring health to those who are not so well. We also have evidence of China's assistance in 1,000 other ways, including, of course, over $1 million in worth contributed towards the 4th SIDS conference, which is planned for May the 27th through the 30th, 2024. So when the detractors of China speak, they seem to forget that the reality is that we experience what is good from China. And we do not subscribe to the anti-Chinese bashing that has occurred because China's 5,000-year civilization is now on a path which seems to suggest that China will become the largest economy in the world within a matter of a few years, certainly within my lifetime. And I think that is what we are seeing, this competition among and between states, and the success of China in attracting large numbers of states that find themselves in difficulty and look to China to help them to get out of that difficulty, especially so bringing development to their peoples, which is what the Chinese have done here in Antigua and Barbuda. So when the detractors speak, we pay them little attention. I think that's what you meant by reputation, but I was hoping that you would in fact bring some greater clarity to this idea of reputation, and the one which you ended on was debt. And I want to remind you that Jamaica has been in an IMF program for almost 40 years now, or maybe a few years there. And Antigua and Barbuda had a brush with the IMF when the United Progressive Party was the government. And as soon as we got to office, we indicated to the IMF that we were no longer interested in having a second IMF program, and that we would pay them off, which we did. $320 million paid off by March of 2018. So when you look at our performance and the assistance rendered to us by China, we know that the Chinese are good neighbors, despite the fact that they may be many oceans away.
All right, thank you for that. I just want to wrap up and hand over to my colleague. But Mr. Harris, my intention of asking for clarification on the MOUs, or even the public asking for education on these MOUs, is not saying bad things about China. We don't want to bash China. We want to have an understanding because, like you said, China is the largest economy in the world. We're 100,000 people in a country where we had a press briefing on Tuesday where the knighted Minister of Health, Sir Malwin Joseph, said that our hospital is falling apart because of lack of operational and maintenance manuals. So how are we to negotiate and understand the level of negotiations if we cannot understand the importance of basic manuals and operation of a hospital, that the basic health care is important? And I really want to wrap up on that, sir. So it's not bashing China. And I want to also, one second, I also want to open my platform, my independent platform, that the government can come, we can prepare the discussions, and we can educate the people, aside from the ABLP's platform and those of the UPP. I'm just saying, sir.
All right. You made a speech.
All right. Nikki, thanks. Nikki is with Free Press 268. Let's go back over